Today we are going to be sharing the story of trauma, resilience, and healing. Everyone who has a dissociative disorder has different experiences in their childhood, and this is one of them. I hope this story can be helpful in the way that DID is not just manifested out of nothing, it is created from severe childhood trauma. Some people might be able to relate to this person's experiences, others might not, and your experience is still valid. So without further ado, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and let's get into the video. Hi, we are the solar system. We are 24, turning 25 very soon, and we were lucky enough to get a diagnosis pretty early in our adult life. We were born and spent a good amount of our early childhood in Atlanta, Georgia with our mom, dad, and little brother. Our mom was a teen mom, and for a good chunk of our early childhood, we didn't have very much money, so up until first grade, we were homeschooled. For the most part, our early years were nice. We would spend our early days playing with toys, doing art, exploring the forest around the house, and hanging out with our grandpa. And in Georgia with our grandpa is where the first, sadly, of many incidents happened where we were forced to do things we didn't understand. In this situation, it was our uncle on our mom's side along with a bunch of his friends forcing us to do acts for them. Although at the time we didn't understand and simply moved on from it like it was something that happened regularly, even if it wasn't. Other than that though, we look back at our early years and think, hey, it wasn't all that bad. But things took a turn for the worse when we moved away from everything we had known up to that point to the sunny state of Florida because we have family here. This is also around the time that our family was able to start working our way to being financially stable. We lived in a nice house in a little neighborhood and we went to a school that was within walking distance from our home. And oh boy, school. That's when things started taking a turn for the worse. Up until third grade, we were placed in special needs classes. And frankly, I'm not sure how to word this without coming off the wrong way, so I should specify that I do not blame these kids for being the way they were. I more blame the school system for effing them over just as it had me/us. Now back on track. In these classes, it was basically a everyday occasion for kids to have meltdowns where they would flip desks and bookshelves and scream and have full-on meltdowns whenever things didn't go the way they wanted. The worst part is that these meltdowns were never dealt with properly, ever. And we speak from personal experience. We remember vividly having a meltdown where we flipped a desk or two, and instead of people actually trying to help us calm down and deal with our emotions, the teachers had the school cops come in and deal with us. We were honestly lucky, or at least I feel like we were. To our knowledge, in these situations, it's common for children to even be tased. Luckily, that didn't happen. We simply got restrained and then sent home. And we can say with confidence our parents were not happy. Less so with us and more with the situation and how it was handled. But despite that, we continued to go to that school until third grade, when we needed to move to another house and in turn needed to go to a new school. It was at this point the school system decided to try and fix its wrongdoings and put us into a regular class for third grade. But after years of being surrounded by kids who were constantly having meltdowns and destroying everything they saw, it kind of made little us think that behavior was normal and perfectly okay. And oh boy, when I tell you that was a source of a lot of problems, it was the source of a lot of problems. Being stuck in a class like that meant we were severely stunted in both maturity and common knowledge. We couldn't read even remotely, and math wasn't even a part of the picture. And we had a minor speech impediment, but that was the least of our worries at the time. Third grade was hard, to say the least. We had a teacher who, despite doing her absolute best, and looking back, she really did, and we still love her a lot for that, couldn't help very much. It was also around this time we started picking up some weird mannerisms according to our parents. Although looking back, we think that these behaviors were early signs of something being up with our brain. Anyways, third grade is a bit of a blur for us. Nothing really noteworthy happened, other than what we believe to be our first headmate, who we still believe lingers around the headspace even now. Although there is a possibility that it could have just been me playing pretend. Fourth grade didn't get much better for us. We remained in the same school and had the same friends, but we picked up some more habits. The worst of them was stealing. In fourth grade, we were avid thieves. And we look back at that with lots of shame. The worst part is that our parents won't let us live it down. But other than that, it was pretty much the same. We couldn't read or do math, not to mention the fact these teachers cared less than the one we had in 3rd grade. That was pretty sucky. Like 3rd grade though, that year is a blur to us. But we do recall it was around this time stuff more or less took a turn for the worst at home. We contribute that mostly to our lack of self-control and the fact we were failing so hard it's a miracle we even passed elementary school. 5th grade was when things actually started to get better for us, just a little bit. We had a teacher who was like a mother to us, and she actually understood what we needed to do well in school. And she did her best to give us what we needed. And by God, that helped us more than you can imagine. We actually started learning to read, and we got better at math. Bonus points, we stopped stealing things, and we actually started growing out of our habit of having meltdowns for no reason. We even had a favorite book, or books, I guess. Throughout 3rd to 5th grade, we went to an after-school center next to the beach. That's where most of our core memories come from, honestly. That's where we made most of our friends and made our first crush. Said crush being our queer awakening. And despite this being so many years ago, we're still very close friends with our first crush. We remember clearly spending our time running around the beach and climbing trees and pretending to be magical animals. Us and our first crush had our own little world we loved to pretend to be in. Said world we actually still have an old Word document for. But as most good things do, this ended as we were plunged into 6th grade despite our parents begging to hold us back due to our severe stunt in growth. But the school system could really care less, as they pushed us headfirst into a new year, new school, a new circle of hell. This is when things really did take a turn for the worst. To cut it short, we failed all our classes. We were bullied to the point of paranoia, chased to our new after-school care location daily, and SA'd multiple times. Not to mention the teachers. Oh, the teachers. When we say they could care less about what they were doing, we really mean it. Those people didn't even bother to try to help us. Or anyone, for that matter. All but maybe a handful who were actually good at their jobs. Unfortunately, one turned out to be a and the others quit halfway through the year, so that made everything worse. Along with that, this was around the time one of our other uncles, who we refer to as our older brother, we had kind of a relationship, moved in with us to get away from his abusive dad, and by proxy our grandma. At the time, he didn't tell us very many things because we were still too small to understand what he meant, but all that changed quickly. 7th and 8th grade, this is when things really start. We ended up moving again, so that meant a new school away from everything we knew. This also meant a new schedule for us. We would need to wake up at 8:30. By that time, everyone was out of the house. And we would need to get home by 4 o'clock. And by that point, the only one who was there would be our older brother. At first, this wasn't all bad, but as the year progressed, things really did go right to hell. I would say maybe the 7th circle of hell. In early 7th grade, we got into a relationship. Not too long after said person stopped showing up to school for about 3 months, and in that time, one of our other friends said they wanted to date us. And because we struggled with saying no, we agreed. Us and this person dated for about a week before they broke up with us because we were too clingy. Then guess who comes back to school? None other than the person who we thought would never come back. This led to a whole slew of problems. The person who we dated while the first person was gone stole our fursuit head, and we'll get into that later, spread rumors about us, doxed us, and basically turned the whole school against us. Even the person who we considered friends. But luckily for us, the person who disappeared understood what happened and remained friends with us for a good bit after that. Although they turned out to be a very disgusting person, so we don't talk to anyone. But at the time, she understood the situation and wasn't mad. But what mattered is that everyone else hated me. And so began the never-ending loop of torment and constant fear for my life. Because my phone number and address were now public information. There was always a looming threat of being attacked. And of course, that happened. It was bound to happen eventually, and happened it did. Kids started calling our phone and sending threatening messages and even following us home. But it was also around this time our older brother started explaining things about our parents to us, like how they spent more money on weed than they did buying food for the family, and how they treated him about the exact same, if not worse, than his dad when he had lived with him. This knowledge didn't do too much to add gas to the already massive fire of hopelessness in our heart. If we're gonna be completely real with you, we barely remember anything from 7th and 8th grade, other than being in many sexually abusive relationships, manipulative relationships, sucky relationships in general, really, constantly living in fear of what might happen next, and the countless times we attempted unalive and failed, and all the bullying. So much of it. Constantly being barked at for dressing a certain way, and doing things that bring you joy. Being told to unalive yourself daily, being called slurs. All of that really messes someone up. And looking back, it's no shock this was the time we started to pick up on the fact that there was much more to our brain than what we already knew. Then, before we graduated middle school, our older brother got kicked out. Our parents said that he moved out on his own, but when he was getting his things, he told me they had kicked him out without any warning or so much as a reason. Honestly, I miss him a lot. He was one of the few people I felt like I could open up to about anything and he would understand. We also used to smoke together all the time. That was nice. But at this point, he's gone and we ended up moving into his old room. We also kept everything he left behind. And even now, we still hold on to everything. Anyways, now that he was out of the picture and we were officially isolated again, with the knowledge that our parents sucked and the looming threat of being kicked out just as our older brother was. Luckily, that never happened, but we wish it did. Oh, how badly we do. From that point forward, our parents became extremely abusive, isolating us for weeks, even months on end, cutting off all contact we had to the outside world, blocking out all forms of communications we had, and cutting off everyone who helped us figure ourselves out, and constantly blaming us for every bad thing that happened to us. Quote, oh, well, the reason he did that is because you did this, and maybe if you weren't such an attention seeker, that wouldn't have happened. Unquote. You know, the typical victim blaming stuff. There were also many occasions where our mother actually hit us when having a panic attack. Once she even slammed our head into the wall and managed to draw blood. She denies it ever happened, but we have the pictures. Oh, we have pictures. They also had a tendency to deny everything we were feeling and going through, saying it was an overreaction or that we did it to ourselves. Oh, this was around the time we actually started figuring out everything that we felt, using what time we had to use the internet to connect with people and do research on how we felt, eventually coming to the conclusion that we are a system. For the longest time, we were afraid to call ourselves one, and even now, we're still afraid that people will fake claim us. But anyways, other than the isolation and constant abuse, our school lives got much better. Somehow we managed to go from failing literally every class to straight A's. I give the credit to the teachers who actually did their jobs and tried to help us whenever they could. And the students, the lifelong friends we made. But despite the fact it was much better, high school wasn't without its own set of blunders. For one, the essay continued, and so did the cycle of getting stuck in abusive relationships. And the paranoia from middle school still remained. And likely the most relevant part of the whole story, the constant struggle to stay connected. Because we had gotten more comfortable with being a system over time, we had internet access and friends who actually understood us, but the looming fear of being called an attention seeker and having our friends abandoning us plunged us back into a locked down blob on the floor. It stayed that way for a long time, but eventually we opened up about it. But sometimes, or really a lot of the time, we would still lock ourselves down to prevent us from hurting ourselves or others. The abuse from our parents and the constant isolation continued until we turned 18 and graduated high school. That was when we got everything back. But we needed to rebuild everything we had created after it was all deleted. But that was the least of our concern. The priority at the moment was messaging our friends. We got back in contact with as many people as we could, and a majority responded. Also, our mom took us to Japan for our 18th birthday, and that was amazing. After that, we went to Czech to visit one of our childhood friends. That was honestly one of the most magical experiences ever. Both us and our friend cried in the airport. After that, though, we went home back to America, where we packed up our stuff, or some of it anyways, and moved into a van with our friend from high school, which is actually where we are now. We've been traveling around ever since we turned 18, and for a bit after we moved out, we cut off all contact with our parents before eventually deciding to try to talk to them, which could have gone much better, and we still don't really like them, but at least we can come home for Christmas. As it stands now, we make a living doing art, making costumes and drawings and animations of anything really. And life absolutely has its moments. I mean, seriously, stuff is never gonna be smooth sailing for us, but it's absolutely much better. And most importantly, we don't hate ourselves with a burning passion. And as it stands now, we've been SH free for almost a whole year. How neat is that? In this story, we could see how repeated and prolonged abuse can form into trauma and dissociative disorders. On my channel, we talk about people who think that having DID is fun, but in this situation, you can see how it is a psychological escape, where dissociation seems like the only option to escape from this experience. Everyone's healing process, diagnosis process is different. So in that way, I do very much appreciate you, the solar system, for sharing your personal experience. Healing from DID is incredibly complex, with it being coupled with CPTSD. It is manageable through things like therapy and is not a death sentence. So anyways, thank you guys so much for being here to listen to the solar system story. If you can, give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and comment below your thoughts. I would really appreciate it. Thank you so much to each and every one of my members for supporting my efforts on this channel. If anyone ever wants to share their story, all my information is in the description. To everyone, have a good day, night, whatever the case may be, and peace out.